This is sailing yacht Serenity, and this is Trevor, her skipper, who I've met in Varna in Bulgaria. As you can probably see, we're in a harbour, not anchored at the moment, but Trevor has two anchors on the front of his boat. He has a CQR type and a Bruce anchor, and down the side here he also has a Fortress type anchor. And Trevor's a very experienced lifelong sailor and had done a lot of competition work, and his steepest learning curve, a bit like mine when he started to travel around, was the art of anchoring. So we're going to be having a chat about the different types of anchor and what Trevor does and why he does it the way that he does it. Okay, so Trevor had been sailing since he was 9, and he's done Sydney Hobart races and all sorts of things, and of course they carried rope rather than anchor chain. So when he started travelling as a liverboard, anchoring was a bit of a new art or science, depending how you look at it. So you told me you'd been on this trip for about 12 years, and that kind of implied there'd been other trips. So when you first started travelling, what sort of anchor did you use, and had you had any tuition, and how did you go about it?
As I said, it's a steep learning curve. On this boat we've always had a CQR anchor. We also had an Admiralty anchor, which is great for weed and things like that, but incredibly difficult to stow. So we got rid of that, and we purchased a claw or a Bruce type anchor.
Yeah.
We're not all that happy with the Bruce. We're very happy with the CQR. We've also got what we call a Danforth or a sand anchor, which is a Fortress brand, aluminium, and we use that as a kedge anchor, and also in tandem with our CQR anchor. That is, we put it on a short 1 to 2 metre strop of chain, drop that first, and then drop the CQR behind it. And that helps it set, particularly in the Mediterranean, where it's hard to get a good holding surface.
I've done something similar actually with a Brittany anchor, which isn't that different from a Fortress in a way, and my own CQR. But I was in a place called Seychelles near Lisbon, and it's tidal there, and there's a river, and I was swinging this way and that every day, and I was there for quite a long time. And what happened was that the chains got kind of wrapped around the Brittany anchor because I was going around in a circle.
You had two chains?
I had two chains.
Oh, okay.
But I had, like you, I had a couple of metres, maybe 3 or 4 metres of chain joined on. So I had the two anchors effectively on a common chain, but with a bit of a gap.
Understand. Yep.
And they got tangled up after about 2 or 3 weeks, and then one very stormy night, the whole thing started to drag. When I winched it up by hand, big ball of chain, and instead of the anchors being apart, they were very close together. Yeah. And I couldn't untangle it in that storm. I sat on the bowsprit on my own and couldn't untangle it. I had to drop the whole lot down, keep the motor on tick over all night, and when the storm abated, I had to take my third anchor off in the dinghy and set that, and then I could get the whole lot up and untangle it. So have you had any problems using multiple anchors?
Yeah, on the east coast of Australia, on occasions we've had to sit out cyclones. So you generally find a mangrove creek, you head up the mangrove creek, and it depends on the situation as to how you anchor, but you generally try and put 2 anchors out because the wind will always veer, and you always try and tie off to some mangrove trees. Sometimes there are just no substantial mangrove trees to tie to. So this particular time we had 2 anchors out, 2 different roads, and sure enough, after the big blow went through, we had a ginormous mess, and it took us hours, and you can't dive because of the crocodiles. So it took us nearly all day to untangle that.
Yeah, I often dive. I've never had to think about crocodiles.
There was another time in the Red Sea, can't think of the place, it was in Eritrea, I think, and we had some very, very high winds forecast, so we did it once again. We put out anchors and rows. I do use 2 anchors in a different manner, which I'll explain in a minute. The wind veered as it does, and we sat there all night and woke up the next morning, and once again we had a big chain, but it was a big tangle. It was easy enough though, because I was able to get the dinghy in the water, calm weather, and move the boat around to untangle the roads, so that wasn't too bad.
You know, the reason that I'm so anti using multiple anchors on my own is the business of untangling them in an emergency.
Yep.
In other words, it's great when it's calm, but if you're suddenly dragging and the two things are tangled together and you're on your own, it's far more complicated. So if I've got 1 anchor down and it's dragging, at least I can winch that 1 anchor up single-handed and get out of there. But if I've got 2 to deal with, as a single-handed person, that can be a problem.
Even when you've got crew, that is a real issue, getting that second anchor up and making sure that there is no tangle in the chain or rope and chain. So
let's talk about actually setting anchors in the first place. So you arrive in a bay somewhere and you're going to anchor. Tell me what your advanced thinking is, what your planning is for anchoring, and how you go about it. In other words, when I say how you go about it, I have seen people in the Mediterranean and the Aegean drop their anchor with the boat going forwards, which I never do, because the chain comes up against the hull and starts taking the paint off. You see all sorts of different people doing different things. So let's assume no complications. You've come into a bay. Tell me what you look for and how you go about anchoring.
I guess the first thing you do is you look at the chart, try and determine what's going to give you the best protection in the worst case. Then you look at the shape of the land and how it's likely to be underwater. That is, if it's a long sloping plane coming into the water, you can bet your bottom dollar that that is going to continue into the water. So you're going to be a fair way out, and it's not going to give you a lot of depth. You don't want really shallow water to anchor in if there's a blow. So that's kind of what you look for, and that all goes through your mind as you're coming in. The next thing you look at is obstacles, the possibility of swinging onto something. You look for other yachts, and in the Mediterranean that is a real issue. Then what we do is we come in, try and always come upwind, always. If not, come in downwind and turn around. Bow to wind, try and stop. And what I do to determine that is I drop the anchor so that it's about a foot under the water. And as soon as we've got no way in, I then slowly drop the anchor, because the depth that I know, because my chain is marked and I've got a depth sounder. And from there I just let the boat sit and let the wind and or current, tide, whatever, take us back to a predetermined length, normally about 5 times the depth. And then what I do is, once I got everything settled down, I'll then put it into reverse and very, very slowly set the anchor. You can soon tell, in the way I do it, is I put my foot on the chain, and you can soon tell whether the anchor is holding. You can feel it on a rocky bottom through the chain, and of course if it's held really well, the rope gets the chain gets very, very taut. So it's not rocket science, but it is the best insurance that you're going to get.
Yeah, I do something very similar. I always let the wind take the boat back, and I generally put a couple of fingers on the chain to see if it's chattering across the seabed. What ratio of chain to depth do you use?
About 4 to 5 times. Never under 4. Now, having said that, there are times when you have to be under 4. That, in those circumstances, not so much in the Mediterranean, but on the east coast of Australia, we used to use what we call an anchor buddy, an anchor angel, an anchor, what do you call it?
Yeah, some people call them a charm.
Those things.
Same as a buddy,
and
anchor angel.
If you've got limited swinging room, they're a very, very, very good idea. But once again, there is an element of risk of tangle.
Yeah, I've done the same. I've used various weights, old cylinder head from a car, and various things, and I don't use an anchor buddy anymore myself, because again of this thing of tangling and getting it up single-handed. I guess it's a lot easier with an electric winch, but I used to pull the anchor buddy up by hand because it was on a big sort of shackle that slid on the chain. I used to pull that up by hand first, take it off, and then winch the anchor up. But when they're tangled and you pull it up and it doesn't come,
what do?
You've then got to start winching the whole lot up together. And I try and have an arrangement that I can always get away easily if things go wrong and I'm on my own. But I do think they work. I do think they help to set the anchor, and obviously swinging room is a vital ingredient in the kind of art of anchoring. If you were coming into a bay and you wanted, for the reasons you mentioned earlier, you wanted to set 2 anchors rather than 1, what would be your technique for that?
As I said, I'm not a fan of 2 anchors unless the 2 anchors are, for example, in a tidal situation where you lay 1 anchor forward and 1 anchor aft, and you have a swivel in the middle of the chain, if you can understand that.
Yeah.
That way it pulls to either one, and if one gives way, well, you've always got the backup of the second one. You still have the issue of recovering both of those anchors without there being a problem.
Yeah.
Now, it can be done relatively simply by retrieving your chain, having the second anchor shackled on to that chain, undoing that shackle and putting a separate line onto it, then recovering it using that line, which you kind of got to do anyway, because 2 chains won't go through 1 gypsy.
No.
Once you've got the second anchor out of the way, everything's back to normal. The other way to do it is to lay 2 anchors, each with its own road.
Yeah.
So you go, and I generally pick about a 45-degree angle, and I'll go up and drop 1 anchor. I'll come back, and when I'm happy with that, I'll take some bearings on where I am. Then I will go forwards again at about 45 degrees from that first anchor, drop the second anchor, and come back until I've got about the same distance on each of the anchor roads. The second one is always rope in our case.
Okay.
We just don't have enough chain. We use 110 metres of chain, and I just can't afford to carry any more than that. So I've got 300 metres of 22 mil nylon anchor road that I always carry.
Yeah, I have something similar on my spare anchor. Do you ever use the dinghy to set or recover a second anchor?
I've tried. I remember years ago doing it in a conventional dinghy, and it was relatively simple. But with an inflatable, or in our case it's a rib, still inflatable, it's very, very difficult, because the anchors and the chains and the roads weigh such a lot, and the wind, by this stage you're anchoring, there's normally a bit of wind up, that thing will go where it wants to go. So it is not an easy practice. It can be done, particularly if the conditions are benign when you start. But once the wind gets up in an inflatable, it's really a tall order. Yeah,
it is. I've struggled with that. When I was in Seychelles, the incident that I spoke about earlier where the chains got tangled up, I did have to use an inflatable on that occasion to take my Danforth anchor off, which was on the nylon road, and set that. Had it been on chain, or at least had it all been on chain, it would have been impossible. I have a hard dinghy now, and it's slightly easier, but I try and avoid those complications, as I've said before, because it's fine putting it out. Maybe you're anchoring in calm conditions. It's fine setting it, but if you need to get away in an emergency and you've got dinghies down and anchors all over the place, it's terribly difficult. Do you use tripping lines and buoys?
Yes, we have and we do. But once again, I have a bit of an issue with those as well, because they cause as many problems as they solve. One of the problems is passing yachts and other traffic tend to get, that is if they're buoyed, the tripping line is buoyed, tend to get caught in that buoy, or it will tangle in the chain as the boat, particularly at night time when no one's awake, obviously, goes around and around, and when you recover your chain you find that your line's wrapped around it. And of course this will always happen at the worst possible time. You've got to try and untangle that damn thing. So yes, we do, but I do it not as often as what I'd like. I do like to know where my anchor is. Yeah. But as I said, it causes problems.
Well, I regularly dive on my anchor to make sure that it is set. I had a bit of a heart-stopping moment one time. The anchor was kind of on its side and partially dug in, and I sort of swam down close to it, and an octopus shot out from underneath it. I jumped out of my skin. And the most hilarious thing that happened to me was in that same bay. That was Talamanca in Ibiza, and it was quite crowded, and I wanted people to be able to see where my anchor was because I had quite a lot of chain out. So I was going to swing quite a long way, and I didn't want somebody else anchoring in my swinging circle because they had no idea where my anchor was. So although I'd anchored without putting a tripping line or a marker buoy, what I did was I got the buoy out and I got the line out, and I actually put my flippers on and swam down to the anchor, passed the tripping line through the little loop on the CQR and tied it off, swam to the surface, and you know, that was fine. I'd got the right length of rope and the little buoy was sitting on the surface, and I patted myself on the back and went back to the boat confident that nobody would anchor in my swinging circle. And later that day a motorboat tied onto my tripping line to use it as a mooring.
I've actually seen that with a fishing boat doing it to mine. Yes, they cause as many problems, as I say, as they solve. The one thing that is a good practice, I think, is to have a 2 metre length of line, 1 to 2 metres, coloured line, tied to the crown of your anchor, and it just sits and waves in the tide, so that if there is a problem, you can locate it pretty quickly once you dive in. Yeah. And from there you can see it, attach another line if necessary, or even pull on that line and sometimes free your anchor. Yeah. Where we come from, the east coast of Australia, it's not always a good practice to dive in some of the creeks up north because, as I said, crocodiles. Yeah. So you have to try. Oh, and up in around New Guinea was murder sometimes trying to get your anchor to hold, and of course there was no way are you ever going to get in the water in some of the creeks. The harbours, yes, but not the creeks. Even the harbours have crocs.
So you have on the front of this boat your CQR and your Bruce. Do you make it a habit to use one all the time and the other one's a backup, or do you look at the nature of the seabed and choose which anchor to use?
When I got the Bruce, that was the rationale. In practice, no, I use the CQR. The Bruce, in my opinion, is not as good as the CQR. The Bruce doesn't seem to hold as much. There are new anchors out now. One's called an XYZ, I think it is. Okay. And it's based on the triangular shape with a roll bar on it. Yeah. There are a number of different brands. I'm not quite sure. I know folks that have them and swear by them. Yeah. They say they are far, far superior to the Bruce. The other thing with anchoring, in all, or it seems that in other parts of the world, I'm talking about outside of the Mediterranean, the anchoring etiquette is common knowledge to everybody, and most people tend to abide by that unwritten etiquette. Yeah. Except those folks from the Mediterranean who have their own version of anchoring etiquette. That is, if it's a bit of water, it's mine. Yeah. So that's something that other folks, like coming into the Mediterranean, have to address pretty quickly. Yeah. Otherwise there's a crash.
Well, yeah, I've seen some very unfortunate instances. I did see a catamaran drag into a motorboat that was on a mooring in a gale, and it broke the mooring, and the motorboat drifted out to sea, and the catamaran did nothing to recover it whatsoever. Luckily, somebody on shore had seen what happened, and they went chasing out with another motorboat and recovered the first motorboat and streamed the motorboat they'd rescued out behind them on their mooring. And the next morning, when the owner of the motorboat that had been damaged and nearly lost came back, the owners of the catamaran immediately jumped in their dinghy and went to see him and told him a complete and utter pack of lies. And it was only when I explained to him that the German guy, in fact, had rescued his boat, and the reason that his motorboat was tied behind the German guy's boat was because the German guy had saved his boat from going out to sea. I mean, I had thought about chasing after it, but it was blowing between 40 and 50 knots. I was on my own with a manual anchor winch. I had the snubber on and my anchor was set firm. By the time I'd actually got out of there, it probably would have been so far out to sea I wouldn't even know where it was.
We've had two instances that come to mind quickly where we've had boats drag onto us, and each occasion they were catamarans. So therein lies another issue. You mentioned before, what do we look for when we're anchoring? Among other things, we look for air marine wind generators and try and stay away from them.
Because of the noise?
Because the noise is horrendous.
Yeah.
The second thing we look for is a catamaran, and stay away from them because they skit all over the place. Generally they won't use chain, they'll use rope, and so it's not a safe thing to do to anchor near a catamaran in a blow.
Well, some of them are more responsible
than
others.
Yes, of course,
yeah.
like all boats, I guess.
But boats sailing at anchor is an interesting point.
Oh yeah.
Because you mentioned etiquette, and obviously the etiquette is that, you know, somebody's there first, you don't anchor on top of them, things like that.
If there is a problem, the last man in leaves first.
Absolutely.
Except the Mediterranean.
But in a crowded anchorage where some boats swing slowly and others actually tack on their anchor, don't they? They're
Yes.
sailing under bare poles and they're tacking to and fro. It can be quite difficult. So, yeah, looking for ample space is definitely one of the big important lessons.
The trouble with that, once again, some examples. On the east coast of Thailand, on numerous occasions, we would sail along, find a perfectly beautiful anchorage. We'd drop the pick, everybody's happy. I'd be downstairs doing whatever I have to do, and all of a sudden I hear the tinkle tinkle of ice cubes in a glass, and I come up and I find somebody's anchored right beside me.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bay to anchor in.
Yeah.
It's just that the herd mentality is what we call it.
I think it's because you're a popular guy, Trevor.
And you find, and hey, I think all cruisers have it. You can find the best anchorage and somebody wants to take it.
Yeah.
I have a friend back in Australia, up in the north, well he's actually not now, but up in the north of Australia there's a place called the Whitsunday Islands, and it's a very popular place to rent charter yachts. And I think it's 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon is what we all used to call comedy hour. All of the charterers have to radio into base, the respective bases, where the hell they are and what their intentions are. So it was called comedy hour because it really was funny to listen, because these folks have quite often have no experience. This fella used to, every afternoon at about 3 o'clock, he'd go and find this particular bay and he'd drop his anchor. Come the revolution, all the charter boats come in and say, well, if he's there, it's got to be good. Let's anchor here. So they all anchor on top of him. 4 o'clock comes and they're all on their radios and they're not allowed to move after they've radioed in. He would pull his anchor up and go to where he wanted to go. Always with no other yachts. And it works. Don't ask me why. I think it's the old circle the wagons mentality.
Yeah. Well, we talked about, quickly going back to anchor buddies and chums. One of the things, I don't know how you find. I mean, I use the CQR as my first choice, and you use the CQR as your first choice. One of the things I've found is that if I whack the boat in reverse having stretched the chain out gently on the breeze and so on, but if I whack the boat in reverse straight away, sometimes the anchor will just chatter across the ground. Whereas if I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to be on the boat and I'm happy to sit on watch, I'll put out a lot of chain and I'll stretch it out, and that gentle nudging of the wind and the waves
gradually works
the anchor in.
Yep, we do
Whereas
that. Yep.
if you give it a hard tug too soon, then it will actually jump out and skip across. And once it's started skipping, it tends to keep going. So very often what I do, even if there's not a lot of room to swing, is I'll put a lot of chain out. I'll let it come back, and I'll let it just nudge in, and I'll stay on watch. And then after maybe an hour or two, I'll test it gently on the throttle. And then when I'm confident that it's really well in, then I'll winch some chain back in to reduce the swinging circle.
That's kind of what we do. And I guess it's horses for courses. But if any person who drops his pick is confident, then that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
Having said that, we've seen numerous examples where folks come in on their boat, drop the pick while the boat is still in motion, and are over the side into the dinghy and gone while the boat is still moving.
Yeah, I've seen similar things. I've seen people stop the boat, drop the anchor and a bunch of chain, but probably not enough. And they haven't backed it up, they haven't stretched it out, they've just dropped it in a pile on the seabed.
So the chain's probably gone on top of the anchor.
Absolutely. and then they're in the dinghy and they're off to the bar.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've spoken quite a lot about anchoring technique. What's your view on galvanized chain, stainless chain, swivels, stainless anchors? Different. We talked about it earlier, but if you give me your views on equipment, really.
I prefer. I mean, everybody's got their own opinions and ideas. In my opinion, galvanized chain is better than stainless steel chain for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that mild steel is always stronger than stainless steel, unless you get the most expensive that you can buy, but then of course you're getting rid of some of the stainless qualities of the chain. Stainless steel is susceptible to crevice corrosion, so there just needs to be the slightest little crack and there's a potential problem. But most important of all, in my opinion, is the weight factor. You get more bang for your buck, if you like, with the weight of galvanized chain as opposed to stainless steel. Stainless steel is always lighter, and at the end of the day, what you want on the bottom of the ocean is weight. So you want your anchor and you want that chain to give you that shock absorber effect. But I know lots of boats that have stainless steel anchors, stainless steel swivels and stainless steel chain, and they are perfectly happy with it, never ever had a problem. I remember the Seven Seas, I think it is, it's a USA organisation, Seven Seas Club something. They published a story about a guy with a stainless swivel where the swivel parted in a blow, and it was as a consequence of one of the shackles, if you like, the shackle pins giving way because of corrosion, and the boat was wrecked.
Yeah, I don't use a swivel. I've heard a few horror stories about swivels. I think some of them are actually the weak point. Chain's as strong as its weakest link.
Yes, that's true.
And a lot of the swivels that are on the market are stainless, and I don't like to mix stainless with my galvanized anchor and my galvanized chain because it encourages the galvanizing to disappear. Do you use a swivel?
Yes, I have a swivel. I always have a swivel because I've had the effect of not having a swivel, and it's not pleasant when you're trying to get your anchor up. You mentioned galvanizing, removing the galvanizing on chain. There's a place called Bass Harbour on the island of Langkawi in Malaysia, which is now becoming a very popular yachties destination. It was, and in some instances still is, tin mines, a tin mining area. And a lot of the spoil, if you like, from those tin mines have ended up in Bass Harbour, where the yachts anchor. You can leave your anchor chain down for 2 days, pull it up, and you will see it start to go black. Within a week, the galvanizing is gone. That's just the one good thing about that is you don't get any growth on your chain.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's a silver lining to everything.
Yeah.
And like most people, you've got an electric anchor winch.
Got an electric anchor winch on every cruising. We've only had 3 cruising yachts, had a bunch of racing yachts. We've only ever had an electric winch. I've been in the situation with a manual winch, and as you said before, it's a cow of a job trying to recover that chain when there's a blow, and you're only getting up like each pull half a metre. So.
Yeah.
And this particular anchor winch is a Muir, and the winch has always been good, but once we lost all power. It was just a simple little thing that one of the battery posts melted.
Can I break for a minute? Remember, we're leaving here at 1:10
I've got to go.
Okay.
The anchor post melted. It was an electrician put it in, and that's a whole different subject. What he did was he swaged the terminal on, then he put heat shrink over the top, and part of that heat shrink got inside the terminal. So when the terminal went on to the battery post, there was a gap, an air gap, and that's the best way to generate heat.
Yeah.
That's in fact what happened. So we lost the anchor winch and had to do it by hand. No
But
instruments, no nothing.
Yeah. And you do have that backup, because there are some electric winches, I believe, where you can't stick a handle in and winch by hand.
Yeah, I've never seen one, but I believe that to be true. In our case, it's a conventional fore and aft movement with a bar. Some of the anchor winches you get you can use your winch handle in the top of them, so it's a rotary movement, and that tends to work pretty good. But
yeah, fairly tough.
my recommendation would be that if you can do it, put on an electric anchor winch. My original idea was to have a different battery in the bow and to have it fed from, or at least charged from, the engine.
Yeah.
I was talked out of that. One reason was weight, because the less weight I have up there, the more anchor chain I could put up there.
Yeah.
And I just ran a 3/4 inch cable, or 2 cables in fact, one either side, positive, negative, and it's never ever been a problem. And now I've got another switch that I can go from my house bank to my starting bank in the event that one either goes down, and that will work. It has worked.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time. Yeah, I've thought about putting batteries up front, but I haven't done it for the reason of space as much as weight. But that was very kind of you to do that, and thank you for your
no problem.
Opinions
What I would do, rather than an extra battery, is put a bloody bow thruster up the front. With this size boat, it's the one thing I really do miss is a bow thruster.
Yeah. Well, that's part of another subject, and I am planning to do a book on, living aboard a boat and travelling, and what boat to choose, and what specification, what things are important, and what things are not important.
That's a can of worms.
But that's a whole other subject. Thanks, Trevor. That
no
was
problem.
Great. Cheers, buddy.